Hello everyone, this morning I went and visited a really cool thrift slash antique retro store, American Daydream, that we went to once before, somewhere around May, June I think it was, early this past summer. I've wanted to go back and just haven't made it that direction because there's not a lot else out there that we would really go to, and it's one of those places that's just really fun to explore. Even if you go and just leave empty handed, it's just fun to look at everything, kind of like going to a retro museum for certain sections of whether you're into anything 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, any of that nostalgia stuff from those decades in particular seems to be what's most present. It's really fun to look around. But I did leave with a few things today, a VHS tape and a lot of LaserDiscs, which is the coolest thing. It's one of the few places around here that regularly seems to have LaserDiscs, and there was some new stuff. And the last time I was there, actually a lot more new stuff, a whole bunch that I wasn't interested in. But yeah, some really cool things. First up, the one VHS find that I grabbed, they had a whole bunch of Turtles VHS, probably 20 between a couple of different sections that had them, but there's one that I wanted to grab, Sky Turtles. I want to get all four of the Burger King Kids Club's VHS. I've been looking for them. I already have two of them. Here's a third one, so I'm only missing one to have all four of those, because I had those as a kid. They were really cool, and it's just there are so many different releases of Turtles on VHS, but that's a set that I wanted to complete, so just have one more of those to find. And speaking of completing a set, getting into the LaserDisc here, now I have the CBS Fox widescreen edition of Return of the Jedi, and I now have the trilogy on the CBS Fox widescreen versions and the Faces trilogy on LaserDiscs. Those are the two trilogies that I particularly wanted for the original cuts of Star Wars, the only acceptable cuts of Star Wars. So this was really cool to grab, and the best thing about the LaserDiscs is that they were all in really good condition, and this is the only one that was over $5. So it's also very reasonably priced. Open up the gatefold. So now I have both versions of the trilogy that I was looking for on LaserDisc. That trilogy has been released so many times on LD, it's ridiculous. So there's so many different variations. One kind of oddball one, and then a bunch of Star Trek. That was the coolest thing, Star Trek. But we have a Cary Grant movie, one that I've actually never seen, an earlier one. We have Cary Grant in Every Girl Should Be Married. So Cary Grant movie, and I've not seen it. I had to grab it. This one was actually less than $10. This was less than $5. It was like $4, I think. There were a couple of classic movies like that were just kind of cheapo prices and old image discs, and I was like, all right, cool, Cary Grant, I'm grabbing that. Then the rest is Star Trek, which is awesome. First up, I had one action figure find. I always look through that section. There's an action figure store, man, I keep wanting to go to. Eventually, we'll get there. But I have Sarek from the TNG era. I used to have this one as a kid. Again, it's all the Star Trek stuff. It's like I'd love to rebuild all those ones that I had as a kid. Really awesome to find. And it's funny because I was just watching an episode of TOS with him in it last night, so it's like very prophetic there that I was finding that. And then some Star Trek. One set of the episodes from TNG. This one has Times Arrow Part 2 and Realm of Fear. And this is particularly exciting because I have the volume that contains Times Arrow Part 1 as the second episode in that set. One of those two-parters that got split because of the the numbering of the episodes as they were released. So that was really cool to grab. And I will always be a big defender of Times Arrow. I think it's one of the better TNG two-parters, even though it is never mentioned as one of the better TNG two-parters. I just really like it. I think it's great. So one of my favorites, and Realm of Fear, of course, a good one. And then found some of the original Star Trek movies. That's one thing that I have not really been able to hunt down. They're not hard to find or expensive, the old TOS movies, but I always try to find things in the wild in most cases. And I'm missing some of the original series movies. I have TNG, I'm only missing Insurrection as far as what's on LD, and so the original series I have Wrath of Khan, and I have Undiscovered Country, and I'm missing the other ones. So I was able to add a few more. Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. And Star Trek 4, Voyage Home. And this was particularly exciting because this is the version of Star Trek 4 that I wanted to add. There's been a bunch of different releases, but this one, this Paramount Directors series with an introduction with Leonard Nimoy and things, this is the one that I wanted in particular, so I was very happy that that's the one that I found. So it's like really, really cool to grab that. And then Star Trek V, Final Frontier. So that was the coolest thing, finding LaserDisc, and in particular Star Trek on LaserDisc. That's, you know, my favorite thing ever to find. So it was a really fun trip. It's just fun to look around, you know, in general, and then went upstairs and found, you know, with near all the LDs, and they have a section that's kind of like a mini video store with a lot of VHS and a whole bunch of video games, more focused on 80s, 80s and 90s era. A lot of like mostly cartridge-based games. So it's kind of a cool little setup and just a really, really fun place to go to. And it's definitely that kind of place where maybe a couple times throughout the year go as inventory changes. Definitely not like going to be a quick turnover, not a place I go to all the time, but definitely one that I'm going to go back to some point next year. You know, once or twice a year I think would be awesome to just check it out because it's really fun, and they tend to have LaserDiscs.